Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of Elite FTS for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it. Now, onto the show.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate, and we are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. So we're live. Very good. I got it this time.
That was perfect. That was fantastic.
Usually I'm sitting here for a couple of seconds saying, are we live, not live, because you don't know. Yeah. There's no bell. We need a bell.
We need a bell. We need the on-air sign, right? Just
yeah.
a big lit on-air sign.
Yeah.
All right. So we're here with one of these, in my opinion, one of the strongest human beings to ever walk the planet, right?
Well, at one time, yeah.
Chad, thank you very much for joining us today. You're in town to help us with the Train Your Ass Off. Mm-hmm. You're a columnist for Elite FTS. Mm-hmm. And you just started a YouTube channel, Courage Barbell.
Yes.
Very exciting stuff. We were actually, just before this started, we were talking about YouTube strategy, which
yes.
was actually, it's weird to have that conversation because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah, but you know more than me. Like, I'm getting into this whole social media thing, and it's baffling to me.
Yeah. It's
like, people, I don't know if maybe I don't look 50, I don't know. But, like, people always think
you
I'm
look
young.
about 65.
If you would have said 60, I would have believed it. But, like, people like, to me, I'm like, what the, dude, I remember when Facebook first came out. Like, all this new shit, and people are telling me about algorithms, and you got to have comments, and more people comment and like it, and I'm like, what the fuck does all this mean?
Yeah, I mean, Dave, you've been doing, obviously, the social media stuff for a while. Like, yeah. I imagine that you guys talked for a few hours last night when Chad came in for the first time. Was that part of the conversation?
A little bit. I mean, it's with Chad, to give a little bit more history here for those that don't know, he was brought onto the team as an athlete in 2005. I mean, so we're going back a little while. And to show you how much I appreciate and I like what all the athletes do, but I care more about who they are as a person and who they are as people and how they can help other people. Because of that, I have to ask him, what were your best lifts? I can guess, but they're not going to be right. So
my best official lifts were 1173 squat, 821 bench, and a 755 deadlift for a 2733 total.
Yes. And when the WP,
actually, somebody looked it up the other day. I think it's still like top 6 or something.
It might be. It might be. Every now and again, I'll still go and look. But the time is, I mean, you came in right when the WPO was starting to really become popular. Actually, a little bit before that, but right when you caught a really good wave to ride through there, and then into the West Side Pro-Ams and stuff like that. You didn't win it. You were third, right? Was your best or second?
I took second to Andy.
And then Donnie was under you.
I think. Yeah, and then Donnie was under me.
Yes.
And I won. I think I won the semifinals. I won one of the semifinals, and I took second. Was the highest.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some crazy shit. I mean, it's some things about Chad, which we can talk about later, which is funny, is at one time, because he get fired up, man, and I get fired up, but he get fired the fuck up. Right, and so a lot of people might not remember the lift, but they're going to definitely remember the show, especially for the squats and stuff like that. It was crazy, but back then, our social media was the Q&A that we had on our website, which he's answering hundreds of probably thousands of questions if I just go back and look. So what he knew of social media was, okay, somebody asks a question. There's the general feed, which I can pull from if I want to, and then there's my specific questions. I answer the question, I post it, and there's no way to comment back. That was all on purpose when we set it up. It was like, because forums were really popular.
Right.
And I saw the clusterfuck that they became.
A shitstorm.
They were a shitstorm. And I'm like, you can't help people if everybody's just involved in stupid dialogue and trolling.
Yeah.
Ask a question, get the answer. That's what it is. If you never have, so that was basically start, stop, done. Mm-hmm. So that made it very easy for the athletes and the coaches who were doing it, because they didn't have to get caught up in any of the bullshit or any of
Right.
the trolls. And if the troll sent a question in, you just didn't answer it.
Yeah.
You just delete it. Sometimes they would, like just answer good, or just something like that. Or,
Thanks.
Okay. Well done. Whatever. I mean, it was just, but you really didn't even want to do that though, because then that started polluting the page. So if you're only able to see 30 questions on the page, you don't want to see all these other things that are in there. So, and then when YouTube, I think it was kind of always, it was very young at the time. All we really gave a shit about was use YouTube to film your lifts and then put the embedded code in your training log.
Yep.
So YouTube wasn't about the YouTube. It was like, here's a way to go post the video that isn't going to create a bandwidth on our page. So they can pay for all the storage fees and the bandwidth for the video.
It's just a link.
We're just going to put it on there. So for most of us, YouTube was just where you went to post the video. You didn't give a fuck about what the views were. It could be 2 or 3. Who cared? Because the training log was getting thousands of views. So I'm still to this day don't know how that algorithm or how those views really count. Because I would look at the training log and say, okay, this got 2,000 hits to it or whatever it was. And then I would look at the YouTube video on their site and it's like, it's got 5. So I'm like, this, either these people.
So are they reading it and not watching the video? Or it just doesn't
I don't
record
know.
if it comes
At this
from
point, it
that
doesn't
one?
matter. It was so long ago. But that's kind of the extent of that. So now it's, we've tried to figure out how to leverage a lot of these things, because even up until a couple years ago, the only thing we really cared about our YouTube about was the same thing.
Right.
Create the video, put it in there, and then embed that, whatever that video is, in the article that we're putting on the site that has the most traffic.
Yep. And
so the strategy had, it had to change. And I really, sometimes I wonder if it was the best way to, I don't know. I really don't know. That's what we've been trying to figure out at a little bit higher level, is that. So it's different for a lot of the guys that were using YouTube, say 15 years ago, because their purpose was completely different. We're going to put it up here so somebody can see the lift and put it, there it is. And sometimes they would try to do I guess to say they call it a vlog, where you would get on there and say, here's what I do with my training for this week. And then just kind of, I'm sure you can go to your site and you still have all that shit on there, right?
No, because I left my YouTube site. Like, I canceled everything at one point. Like, I dropped, I'm like, hey, they won't let me have any more people on Facebook. I win. Okay, I'm out.
I won that game.
Yeah, I won. And I canceled all that shit, but I kept my YouTube channel. And then when I wanted to switch the name over, well, I think I actually extrude some kind of electrical force that just destroys computer shit. So somehow I'm trying to switch the name over, and I lost all of it. So then it's like, okay, ground up, start over. But I did have, I had copies of a bunch of the old videos I made, and guys were like, hey, do that Heart and Will video. You got to repost that. Because there was a couple videos that people apparently just absolutely loved.
Yeah, I forgot about that. You had motivational shit that you were doing,
so
too,
I went back and reposted some of those.
Yeah.
Which were pretty funny to watch from, again.
Yeah, it's different, though, because when it was in context, it's a little bit, and we still have all the old training log. We still have that site. Right now, it's not. It's not on the site.
Right.
But the URL exists. They all exist. I mean, there are ways that you can go find it, but I don't want it on the site yet back until everything else is working the way that we need it to work for content. And then I'll put it back in there. But there's a million questions.
Well, it's amazing from my perspective having access to those and just being able to look back and this is we can use this now.
Yes.
This is still
And if they were
information.
consistent, now it really reigns even more true, because I get on their ass about consistency all the time.
Yeah.
But now you can go back and look at his training log and look at the whole year that played out before each one of these meets and see what was going on, why things were happening. One of the things they get asked about is, can you take Conjugate and spread it over 2 weeks? That's a popular question.
Right.
Of course.
That's a popular question.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And so I say, well, yeah, Chad.
I did that 15 years ago.
I know. And then that's why I
Hence
said
recycling material, right?
But the thing is, that's one of the reasons why we will restore this thing back, because I'll say, well, yeah, Chad Aichs did it, but you need to understand he wasn't sleeping, he wasn't recovering. So the reason he did this, and this was all documented, probably over documented, because every day he didn't sleep. So every post is I didn't sleep. But But that's the cool thing, though, because then I can go say, hey, look here. And then they can start asking themselves, okay, am I doing this just because it just fits my schedule better, or am I doing it because of recovery reasons?
Right.
And then if the whole time he was doing that, he's working really hard to figure out the recovery reasons. How can I fucking sleep better? What do I need to do? What's causing this? And it was you still struggle with it now, but it was, holy fuck, it was a 10-year battle. It's like, this dude ever going to sleep? You know,
I did APF seniors and I was awake for 10 days.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And following the log, you can see, because there were times he wasn't doing well. Like the depression's really, really key. So you can see, okay, fuck, he hasn't slept for shit. Now look at the tone of the post. Like, oh man, this isn't good. I got other team members calling me like, dude, you should probably call Chad. Something's going on. But you see that's how cool that whole thing was, to be able to go look. And, you know, at some point we'll figure out how to put it together in a different format. You don't have to click on everything, but.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best part about reading those logs, is the story element to it, right? Like, you get the background. If you're reading this, you get to know exactly what's going on, what the workout looked like, what the training looked like. But that's almost secondary to the story that's coming through with what you say about the training.
Yeah, even I think we had conversations back then where you're like, dude, post more photography.
Like, yeah, I mean, his photography
you get
really
good hits, but then when you do photography, it's like,
yeah.
Well, it shows more of a human side.
Yeah.
And the benefit, it's hard to replicate a lot of this, because the benefit there was we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have Facebook. I mean, so you didn't have all these other things. So the guys aren't trying to figure out, or girls, or they're not trying to figure out, how do I post everywhere? It was like, well, this is the only place to post.
Put it all there.
So they're putting it all there, so it tells a better story than having it spread out. You know, ultimately, I think the training logs died because of Instagram, but they were on the way out to begin with, because they're trying to tell a story, you know, to their benefit. They're trying to build Facebook. They're trying to build all these other things, and then actually they all end up being shitty.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And the ones that
spread too
figure
thin.
out, you know, I got to put focus here and not so much on these other ones, are the ones that kind of move forward.
Yeah, I mean, how does it feel? It sounds so crazy to me that you would have to build a following for the information that you have all of a sudden, right? When you were saying, oh, I started my YouTube channel and I have like 100-something subscribers. Actually, Jacob, let's put the Chad's YouTube channel in the chat box if we can. We can do that. Get you more followers, get you more subscribers, because the information that you have is super important. And for people that don't know who you are, shame on them. Especially in this field,
unfortunately, in powerlifting, like, you go to the wayside pretty quick.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody really cared anyhow.
Because there's new guys and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, really, who. Like,
but it's the knowledge as a coach and as a trainer that matters. You got to, you know, when JM first came out too, I think he had 250 followers, and they're still not big. If you go look at what he has, it's still not big. So it's just.
And there's a wealth of knowledge there too.
Yeah.
So what's your?
But I think some of that were. Like, and I'd like to talk about the 14-day thing at some point too. I think there's like, I've always looked at it like, if I want to play football, I'm going to go find the best football player ever. Like, so even if I want to get strong for quality of life, say I'm 70 years old, like, I'm still going to go to like the strongest guys I know. And I think sometimes that doesn't get looked at as much as it could.
Now, go a little deeper in what you mean by go to. You're going to go visit and talk to them, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, like somebody will go, oh, I'm going to go, I need to get in shape and go to 24-hour fitness.
Yes.
And get some trainer that doesn't know shit.
Oh, yeah. Well, the point
and you'll still make some gains, but like, you could go to somebody who actually has some knowledge.
Yes.
Who's, I mean, I train everybody right now from like 8 to 80. And I can take an 80-year-old and all this knowledge that I learned working in physical therapy back in the day, and then through my strength, like, I can help him with his. I got a guy right now whose shoulders were just absolutely destroyed, and now he can actually do some stuff. He can actually move and like enjoy some of his retirement years. I got another client who's in his 50s and he competes master strongman. Like, when I first got him, he couldn't bench like 135 and he was in excruciating pain. Now he can bench 225 easy for reps with no pain. I learned that through all my strength stuff, you know, like where he'd go to 24-hour fitness and they'd be like, or whatever name. I don't know if I throw out names, but you know, they're going to be like, oh well, if it hurts, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
No, fix the shit so he gets better and he can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was shit I learned in powerlifting, like with strength.
We do it long enough, you're going to end up seeing physical therapists. You're going to end up seeing a lot of different things. You can figure out what works, what doesn't work, you know, and then kind of go from there.
And the idea that the experience helps you modify the things that they do in a way that they can still train. They can still
well, say
bench.
you got Joe Blow at the gym who's like, dude, I just want to bench 315 for 5 reps. I'm like, oh yeah, well, that's easy enough.
Right.
But I can actually get him there and get him there way faster and way safer than a lot of these other these trainers that get trained by Globo Gym and stuff.
Yeah, and that seems to be one of the.
I mean, I could find a handyman to build my house.
Well,
but
right.
I'd rather go to an actual carpenter that knows what the hell he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, part of what we were talking about last night, kind of playing to this, and I think the listeners will understand it a little bit better, because there's a divide between, you know, the ones of us that are 50 years old and say 25 years old. Some of it is just terminology, right? So we hear online coach like, fuck that, you can't do that. That's bullshit. It's impossible to zip. All right, because we know what a real coach is. Right, that's what we grew up around that. But there's a gap, because now it's kind of defined a little bit differently. So when I'm speaking to him last night, it's like this online coaching. You can see he's like rolling his eyes, like this is, you know, I'm like, dude, let's just redefine this for a minute. Online coaching, just forget about that name. What you're actually doing is you're either programming or consulting. You're not coaching. See, that's what I would tell him. What I would tell you, because your definition is going to be more of the coaching, because that's what you grew up seeing, the online coaching. You know, that was part of that we didn't have that.
Right.
So that's their mental definition of that, because they've seen it since they were teenagers. Online coaches are a thing. We can't sit there and say, no, it's not a thing, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That would be like going back to us and saying, going to somebody's gym and working with a powerlifting guru like Louie, who we wouldn't even call a coach. You know, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because that's not a real coach. The real coach is on the field with a whistle.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? So we had to define what we thought is a coach as being like a Louie. Where at that time I was fighting with the strength coaches, like, no, those aren't coaches. The real coach is in the weight room on rubber and turf with a whistle. You know, so like a strength coach, a university, high school strength coach, that's a strength coach, not Louie. Remember that? If we go way back, right? So we had to reframe how all that's happening now is the same thing. It's just an evolving of that definition. But to have conversations with you about what's going on, I can't use that because of how ingrained it's become in your brain. Say, okay, let's talk consulting, let's talk programming. And you're like, oh, I get that.
Yeah. No, I did. Like, you completely changed my perception just by defining the word.
Yes.
Because it was like, yeah, I hear coach, and I'm like, there's no way you can't, because you can't touch them, you can't put them in position, you're not seeing everything from. I mean, I walk around guys when they're squatting, so I can see the different angles.
Yes. See, that's like, how you define that coach.
Do that online. Yeah.
That's how you define that coach. You define the other things differently. So if I'm talking to somebody that's 25, then I'm going to be saying the online coaching, and they're going to think that involves programming. But to us, that's not really programming, because they're working more in short-term programming. I call it forward first. So here's this week, we're going to do this week, we're going to do this week, which business-wise makes sense, because you're not going to write a fucking year program for somebody that might sign up for a month and never come back. Right? So to us, it's like, the fuck, how can you do it? So you got to, it's tough, and that was part of what we were talking about last night, because you got to pay attention to the people that are younger to you. You're going to fuck up, and you're going to say some shit you shouldn't say when they first start saying stuff. Right, because you're like, fuck that online stuff, and then you're like, okay, but then you got home and think about it. How old are they? What did they see when they were growing up? What were they seeing when they were 15? Keep in mind, you came on in 2005. That's 16 years ago. So somebody that just got their license this year wasn't even born yet when you had a training.
That's not even about having a following. I got lost. Like, these people, they're like, who is that guy? That guy's old.
Well, you see what I'm saying, though, right? Now you keep moving forward.
Yeah.
You know, you were in the WPO when they were in diapers. So then you're asking, I can't believe you don't have any followers. Like, the kids were in diapers when he was lifting the biggest weights. You know, that would be like going back to us when we were coming up and saying, hey, man, you should look towards, you know, Larry Pacifico, and we kind of did,
Mm-hmm.
but we really, it's like, okay, I respect what he did. It was strong as fuck. I'll look a little bit at what he did, but who's doing this now?
Right.
What's Andy doing? You get what I'm saying? What are they doing?
Well, it's different too, because even like you can still find, there's still, if you punch my name into YouTube, there's still a bunch of lifting videos.
Mm-hmm.
But like Larry Pacifico, they didn't even have that. Like, try to find a video of him. Like, you might have somebody videotape their TV VHS and then put it on YouTube. But I mean, there's not that many videos of that stuff or anything. And now lifters, now they post everything. So there's going to be that record that's more accessible to future lifters.
Here's something to think about.
If they do go back and look at that.
Here's something to think about, which I don't think any of us have the answers to. All the lifting information that you were going to learn, say, in the 70s and the 80s, that was magazines, right? There's really nothing else. But then it was all kind of text-based online, which kind of ran the magazines out. And now it's the video base. So the magazines are pretty much dead. I mean, they're still kind of hanging on by a thread. The text-based content online it's doing okay, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. The video content is doing very well. 30 years from now, the YouTube content is going to be what the magazines are. So I can't say what's going to be next.
What's next?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what nobody knows.
VR.
But if you're
VR.
yes, but, yeah. But if you're in media and you're marketing or whatever it is, you need to always be looking at what's going on, what's popular now, how can you leverage that, but then what could be the next thing,
Right.
because it comes faster than you think it does. You know, a decade and changes everything.
Well, that's, you go, if you like, so I started in 05, so basically 15 years ago. When did I do my first seminar in 99 or 2000?
No, you're going back, yeah, because I didn't even have it off. I was out of my house.
But even back then, you know, we were just, I might still have my West Side VHS tapes. I know I have like Eddie Cohen's VHS tape and stuff.
Yeah, the West Side.
And,
the old West Side ones, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we had. Like, that was a big deal. Like, dude, you got the tapes. Like, everybody in the gym wanted to borrow your tapes. And
Then they wouldn't fucking rewind them.
Yeah, fuckers.
And that's
Losers.
only, I mean, that's really only, God, I forgot about that. I'm so used to DVDs now, you just hit play.
You know, DVDs are done too, by the way. Just let you know, Blockbuster went out of business
I'm out of
years
it.
ago.
I'm so out of it.
He lives in the town that has a Blockbuster.
But even in that span, which is 10 or 15 years, which really isn't that long, like, look how it's changed. I mean, that's also one of my frustrations now, is that the problem I see now is there is good information out there, but there's a ton of crap. And how do people weed through the crap to get to the good stuff?
So I kind of disagree with that a little bit, because there always was a ton of information, right? So say when it was a magazine thing, how many different magazines were there?
Yeah, but but I grew up with Muscle Fitness, Muscle Mag. Like, to actually there was like Powerlifting USA.
Well, I get that, but you got to add to that
subscription.
strength and health, men's health, women's health. I mean, I can probably, give me a computer, I can probably find 15 or 20 magazines, each one of those magazines putting out probably 100 articles.
Yeah, but how much of it was good stuff and how much of it was towards actual strength?
Well, you just validated what I'm saying. You still had to sort through.
Oh, yeah.
Because if somebody new to all of it,
She just proved it.
you see what I'm saying?
Son of a
Somebody
bitch.
new to all of it, somebody
Yeah.
new to all of it wouldn't know the difference. You know, if they've never touched a weight, they just want to get stronger. They don't know the difference between what they're going to see in Men's Journal, Men's Health,
Right.
Flex, powerlifting. To this, it's just all lifting weights. It's the same thing. But just by looking a little bit, you know, just sorting through just a little bit of it, it's like, oh, I kind of like this heavy barbell stuff. What's it called? Powerlifting. So then you just took this big, wide, you know, array of information and just segmented it down. People can still do that now,
Right.
So
That's
yeah,
true.
there's still a whole bunch. You see what I'm saying? So at the broad funnel level, you can still get down to where you want to be, and then it comes down to, okay, now who to trust.
Right.
No, yeah, now I'll agree with you, right? Because now you're getting in there like, oh my God, there's so much powerlifting stuff. What am I supposed to do? But even so much of this, I still kind of put back on the reader and the consumer of, I don't want to sound, I don't care. You're a fucking idiot. Like, just look at all of it and what are the common things, because there's going to be 3 or 4 common things everybody's going to say. Even the ones that we would sit there and say, what the fuck? They're completely out of their mind. But they still, if you listen to what they're talking about, it's some sort of progressive overload.
Right.
It's like, oh, maybe that matters to some degree. Now, how it waves is that maybe that matters. And there's a lot of barbells. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm going from the beginner and start to filter it down. The only where it gets really convoluted would be the intermediate level, where everybody's trying to pivot and sell services to that person. But at the broad level, no.
Well, I think
Well, it was even in the beginning when I've told the story a bunch of times. It was like once I did my first bench meet and went, oh, I like this, and then had some shit in my life, and then I did my first 3 lift meet, and it was like, all right, that's it. I want to do this. I go, but I'm not making the gains I should. Like, so I need help. First time in my life, I actually said I need somebody to help me with this, and so that's when I started doing research. And like, I didn't just go to an elite FTS seminar. I didn't just go to Dave Tate. Like, I put a lot of time in to go, who do I want to learn from? Like, who can I get access to? Who actually has proven themselves? Who has coached other people? And like, I specifically went to Dave and Elite FTS. Like, but I did the research too to look through that. And I mean, even when I remember at the end of I think it was the first day, I came up and talked to you, and I'm like, so can I ask you a question? I'm like, I've been trying to read about Conjugate and Louis' stuff, and I go, it's confusing as hell. I go, everything you just explained to me is like, seems pretty common sense and pretty easy. And you're like, yeah, Dave's just really hard Louis is just really hard to understand. But I mean, that was it. And then I went back to the gym and I started doing it, and everybody in the gym is like, what are you doing? What's that? And it's like, dude, the information is out there. Like, everything you're doing has been done for the last 25 or 30 years. Like, that's old information. And like, nobody wanted to change it. I actually had to con one of my teammates. He kept trying to hit a 650 deadlift. And eventually I go, listen, you will come train with, you got one more meet. I'll bet you right now you don't get 650 that you've been trying for 2 years. And if you don't, you got to train with me. And luckily he didn't get it.
Was that seminar, was Wendler with me?
No.
Okay, so that was
that was in UC Davis.
So is the no. Was it in Reno or was it in Sacramento?
No, it was in Sacramento. In UC Davis.
Right.
And then we did one at the little place called the Fitness Factory.
No, we did one in Reno.
Yeah.
I remember that one very well. Very fucking well. That was a fun. There's a lot of behind the scenes shit with that one. That was fucking funnier now. 'Cause I don't know Nevada for shit. I mean, I don't know any state for shit. So Jim and I are like, Jim was with me with that one, right?
No,
I think he was with me with that one.
No.
And one of them.
I actually, the one at the Fitness Factory, I ended up like helping you coach at that one.
Was Mark there?
No, that
Joe Ken was Joe Ken there.
No, it was just you.
All right, so fuck, I went out there more than I thought.
So then, yeah, because then there was one over in, we did it, the gym. Mark like rented the back of the gym.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
So I remember one where I came into where Joe Ken was coaching, Arizona. Was it University of Arizona State?
Yeah, I think it was.
They're Phoenix is where it was, I believe. I don't fucking know, but anyhow, we had to
Arizona
drive.
State.
Yeah, we had to drive to Reno. I'm like, yeah, it can't be that far. Holy fuck. It was far. And there's nothing. Like, you're like, if we run out of gas or blow a tire,
You're fucked.
When you're in the middle of Nevada, like, there's nothing.
We're so fucked. So that I can't remember which one that was, but that's when the Timmy the Trainer story evolved. And I mean, there's a lot of funny ass fucking shit. Then we finally get to wherever we were. It was a small ass place, because I remember walking into where I was supposed to speak, and it was like the size of like a.
Yeah, it's little.
Yeah, it was like the size of a master bedroom.
And that I think his name was Cody.
Yeah, I
like
can't
the personal
remember.
trainer.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things, Dave amuses the fuck out of me. If you know, he's drinking right now, but
Yeah, wait for it.
So Dave's standing by the barbell rack, and Cody's like, "Can I have a dumbbell bar, or I have a deadlift bar, and I have this?" And he's like all proud of his shit. And Dave takes this magnet off, and he looks at it. He's like, "What the fuck is this?" And Cody's like, "Oh, well, that's a plate weight magnet, and makes my 5-pound dumbbells into like 7-pound dumbbells." And I think that's fucking stupid. And Cody's like, "Oh." Like a little puppy.
Yeah, it was funny. But I do remember the first one that you were at. Maybe it was Jason Purnell put on.
Yeah.
Because it was a little bigger. Actually, at the time, I'm like, holy shit, we actually made money on this one. I didn't lose money because there was like 30 people or 40 people. It's like, holy crap. I was like coming home like, I made $500. This is cool. I didn't lose my ass. And but he come up, starts going through teaching the squat, and it's the same stuff. And every state had different problems, which was a weird thing too.
You should make a map of all
Yeah,
the places.
it was a long time ago, but it was. I mean, after a while, it's like, okay, if I go to the East Coast, this is going to be the problem. If I go to Texas, they all try to squat like Goggins. If I go to, and it works for some, but obviously not others. And so you go to California, it was more high bar with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, so then he gets up and it's not. And then it's like, holy crap, look at this dude's fucking hips. And this dude's fucking big. And then start working up a little bit, you know, because his technique was okay. I mean, he was fixing pretty fast, but as we're working, I think we ended up like 700 or it was 6 or 7. It was way more than what I would see
5 or 6, I think.
in one of those seminars. Because normally I'm fixing everything by 3:15 easy. And it's like, I got to get going. And then it was like they were coming up fast. And then I'm like, I got to talk to this dude because he should fucking really be competing at a whole other level than what this is.
See, that's funny because I remember Dave just tearing my shit up. Because I was actually at that time, and I tell this story too all the time. I was doing 545 for 5 sets of 5 with no belt. Like that was my regular training, and it was Olympic style, like ass as low as I could go. And I went to that seminar, and I think when I threw them all away when I moved, but I had a sheet that had like 40 things listed. Like I was a note motherfucker in that first seminar, because I was all in. I'm like, this is the guy. This is what I'm learning. This is what I'm going to do. And so I took that list, and I went back to the gym, and it was like, fuck, going wide and sitting back, like my posterior chain was so weak. And it actually, where the power rack was where everybody walks in. And I'm like, I couldn't hardly do 135 the way you wanted me to. But I think at the seminar, we kind of modified it so I could still go heavy. And I'm like, no, this is how he said it should look. I'm going to do this. So I like started over at like 135. And everybody would walk by, and the first day, everybody's like, dude, what's wrong? You hurt? And like by the second day, I'm just like, you just keep fucking walking. Just keep walking and you'll see. And then like 6 months later, I did my first 7, and it just kept going.
There was some.
But I sucked it up for that long.
You bring up back a lot of memories of those, because they all get mixed up a little bit, but I remember certain people for certain reasons. I do remember what you were doing, because like, I need to keep this guy on my radar, man.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to do something really big. Just the bone structure and the explosiveness was the bigger
Do you
thing.
remember what I said the very last thing on the second day?
Yeah. You're going to beat me.
Yep.
No, that's another reason. Like, I got to keep track of this dude, because he's got the right attitude too. You know, and it was all because I think we benched, didn't we? You came in for the speed bench stuff, and you benched.
But that amazed me too, because there was quite a few people that first day. I think it had to be at least 40 or 50 people.
Yeah.
And then the second day, I show up and there's like 6 people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck's everybody?
Yeah.
Like, why?
It wasn't part of the thing. I'm like, hey,
paid.
look, I'm like, I'm going to come here. I'm going to bench. You know, anybody that wants to come in and bench, it's fine. All I really wanted was somebody to be there to give me a lift off of the speed work. But that was really it. And one of those that was out there, one of the 4 that I'm thinking of, there was a guy during the Q&A part that we got in this discussion where I'm telling him, you're just weak. He's like, and he's making every excuse on why he's not. And it got to a point, were you in that one?
I kind of remember that.
And I'm like, no, listen to me. You're not fucking hearing what I'm saying. You're fucking weak and need to get stronger. It's not because of this or this or this or this or this or this. And that's what, like, I remember those conversations, and then the in between kind of all blend together. But I remember, I'm like, what the fuck are you even paying for? You know, it's like, this is crazy. Like, everything I'm suggesting, can't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that.
Fantastic.
This. And some of them were legit, but most of them was like, dude, you're weak. And it was not. There was one too, where where Wendler was with me, and I don't know where this one was, but I know it was either in Nevada or California, and we're doing this shit in a squat rack, and we're talking about bands. And at the time, it's like, you should try using bands, because The big thing back then, which is a lot different now, was just the initial stability with the squat, especially if they walked it out, did have a monolift, just moving around way too much. So the quick fix is just throw a band on there. Because as soon as they pick it up, they're like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now remember what you just did.
Yeah.
So when we take the bands off, and somebody said something about, well, I can't afford the bands in the little tiny crowd. And then somebody else said, well, just cut out your beer fund. And immediately Jim's coaching, hears it out of in the background, and it just stops. Boom, pushes the guy in the rack, turns around. Don't you ever cut your beer fund. You can always pull money from someplace else. Don't eat.
Like food.
It was the fucking funniest thing in the world.
Now, obviously you've done an ass load of seminars in your life. How did you manage to get a reach out to like California? I know, like, was Mark Bell from California all the time,
California was a little bit different because when I first got online, and I mean, serious, I got a computer for Christmas. My brother's in IT, and he built a computer. And so I log on. The internet's not a big thing. It's just like dial up and all this stuff. And I start looking, and I'm like, of course I'm looking at powerlifting stuff. I'm like, okay, whatever. And most of the stuff's just crap. And then I stumble across the site deepsquatter.com. And Jason Brunell was running the site. And he's got a Westside Q&A. And I'm like, well, who's answering these questions? So I start reading through the questions. I'm like, yeah, kinda. No. Kinda. Like, no, we don't do that. And all they were doing is taking articles, or Jason or whoever it was taking the articles and just kind of disseminating the information. They were calling Louie, maybe getting some questions here and there. But some of the stuff was like really, really off and not really what we were doing. So I sent an email to him saying, can I answer some of these questions? And then, so he was in California and he competed in California, and he was pretty well known in California for, I think it was USAPL, I believe.
Yeah.
And so just answering on there is actually how that education part of the site started. Because the issue there was he would email me the questions, I'd answer it. My grammar's horrible. And so he would try to fix some of that, but then everything had to be posted in HTML using Microsoft Front Page.
Wow.
So it took a while, just the coding of everything. He did that. That's when, shortly thereafter, I hooked up with somebody who's still our site developer now, that was developing a Q&A forum type thing that did exactly what we talked about: question, answer, stop. And his intent was to promote that and sell it to commerce sites that don't want to deal with all the forum bull crap. So he needed a beta or a testing site. I'm like, fuck, I'll do that. This is perfect for what I need to do. So then I just did this Ask Dave Q&A. But anyhow, that's how the California, because it was already there, I believe, because of Jason. So then they were following on there. And then the ads all the marketing was done in Powerlifting USA. So around the same time, I was helping Louie with seminars for several years, whatever. I'd have to go look, 3-4 years, whatever it was. And then he wanted to quit doing them. So you just do them. So then I started putting those in Powerlifting USA. So that's and the reach wasn't big. Most seminars were lucky to have 10 people. And most of them I lost money on. Right? If I broke even, that was like the greatest thing in the world. And it sucked, but it's like I have to do this for several reasons. I was in Toastmasters. I can go down a deep hole here. But I was in Toastmasters at the time, so I'm trying to work on my presentation skills. I'm trying to work on all these other skills. I'm an introvert. I'm not good with people. I'm like, I have to force myself to do this. Even if I break even, it's a win, from there. And so, yeah, there were a fuck ton of them. And none of them, that was the one I think that he went to might have been the only one that was profitable, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I was surprised how many people were there.
Yes, because you got to understand that you're only charging a couple $100 or whatever it is, and you get 30 people. You got to buy a flight.
Yeah, it ain't cheap.
And a lot of times I was staying in the house of whoever the host was, so that reduced that cost. But then there's a hotel,
right? And
then there's time off work. So I'm losing clients for half the day on Friday. So all that was kind of a wash. But if it was a wash, it was a win. That's kind of how I looked at it.
So it still somehow had to help Elite grow, I think.
Well, yeah, it's like the groundwork.
Most definitely. I mean, if it didn't help from the marketing side, it helped from my presentation side, to be able to be more extroverted.
Right.
You know, and coaching now I can look back because people will watch the train your ass off videos, or if I'm breaking somebody's lift down, like, how the fuck you doing that?
Yeah,
like,
that's what I was going to mention.
Yeah, I've been doing this in gyms for 30 years for one
Right.
thing. I mean, it's been part of the culture I grew up in. Secondly, there's been maybe 200 seminars with 20 or 30 people per seminars that you have to teach this to get it through. And so I figured it out. There's thousands of hours doing it. So it helped there. It just took 20 years to realize.
Coaching's still a skill, just like anything else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And I think the fact that you can go to so many different places, so many different gyms, so many different locations, and see all of these different types of people have, you know, all sorts of different backgrounds, and you can educate them and help them and teach them and coach them.
Yes.
Like, you can essentially, you do that for long enough, you can walk in anywhere at any time with like any group.
Yeah. Well, the schools were a big difference though too, because that was different. That's a coach consulting, you know, for the programming. But there's, hey, can you watch my kids squat? Oh my God. And there's 80 kids, you know, all running at one time. You're like, how the fuck do you do this?
Yeah.
So then you're scrambling and trying to figure out, how can I do this way faster? It's like, what narrative can I cut down? What can I stop saying? Just do this. But then, so there was that as well, because I can't go, in my mind, I can't go there and have somebody squat suck when I leave. Then I fail.
No. Yeah.
You know, so that was fucking hard. That was really hard. But you compromise too. They don't need to be squatting like a power lifter. They need to squat like a football player. So there's some things that are not as important because it's not important to them.
Right.
It's some things that are more key.
So we've gotten a few people that were interested in learning more about your sleep saga. Do you want to jump into that a little bit?
As far as about
the lack of sleep in your life.
Well, let's start. The longest I've ever actually been awake with no sleep is 14 days. And it's interesting. Wow. It gets the world gets really weird.
Yeah.
So I've actually been diagnosed with narcolepsy. Not like just falling asleep narcolepsy, but the fact that, and they think it's an autoimmune disorder where you have these hormones that are in your spinal fluid that basically your body goes after. So my body doesn't know when it should be asleep or awake. So when, like, I may be going through the day, and this is hard to know because it's like, okay, well, is it the narcolepsy, why I want to lay down on the floor and crawl into a ball, or is it that I'm actually that tired? And then when you go to bed, your body's like, hey, let's go do some shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, I just want to sleep, man, and I can't. And then it ranges from that to full-on insomnia. I mean, I used to train regularly on a couple days with no sleep. Like, that was normal for me. Actually, it was when Bigger, Faster, Stronger came out, I went down to the premiere down in Hollywood, and I have a friend who's kind of into making movies. And I go, well, dude, you want to go with me? I go, I don't know anybody else that wants to go. And he's like, yeah, cool, but I don't have much money. I go, we'll fly down, hang out for a couple days. We don't need a hotel room. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, dude, we'll just stay awake for a couple days. Like, what's the big deal? It's like, it's L.A.
Shit.
Like, we'd be able to find shit to do. I think we ended up stopping. He's like, dude, I gotta sleep. We went to Denny's, and I went into 8, and he slept in the car. I'm like, dude, it's 2 days. How hard is it to stay awake for a couple days? So basically, as I got bigger and I was pushing my body harder and harder, the sleep thing just kept getting worse and worse. And I still have it to this day. It actually started, I know it started when I was in about 5th grade. Like, I have not been awake in a class from 5th grade through college. Like, you sit me down and I'll fall asleep. But even then, when I fall asleep, I wake up every 4 or 5 minutes.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, how do you even start to attack that problem, right? Like, that situation. Like, I imagine you've tried everything.
I have a super, super, super high tolerance to medications. So we found Seroquel for a while, which is heavy duty, like dementia type shit. And it would kind of make me sleep, but it wasn't a quality sleep. And I'd wake up and I'd be kind of groggy throughout the day. But when I was lifting, I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, if it slows me down for a couple hours, I'll take it. I don't care. I'll take what I can get. No other sleep medications. Like, I had it was funny, Donnie's like, take Ambien. I take half and it knocks me out. I'm like, Donnie, I've taken like 5 and watched TV all night. And I actually took like 14 grams of GHB one time and watched TV all night. And like, I think 7 will kill you.
I remember telling him one time, because it's, you know, I had issues for a while and I was prescribed Lunesta. I'm like, you ever try the Lunesta? And he just laughed. It's like, no. It didn't do shit for me either. So, yeah. Did you say Pez?
So, I mean, it just blows my mind, right? Like, if I don't sleep for like a night, I feel like shit. Like, what would happen to you after, you said 14 days?
Oh, by that point, you're kind of going nuts.
Yeah.
I worked in a warehouse at the time, and I was in charge of I was in charge of like the rotation of beer and I'd receive it and stuff.
Now, was it like nights or anything?
No,
was
it's days.
Just days.
But you know, so I had to count all the pallets and count the beer and stuff, and it's pretty simple. It's like, dude, that's a 7 tie, it's 5 high, it's 35. Like, it's pretty simple math. And you get to where you can't do simple math, and then I would get pissed off at myself because I'm like, what am I, a fucking moron? Like, what the? Why can't I figure this out? And then my vision would get blurry. Like I couldn't. I mean, I could make things out, but like everything would be seriously blurry. And your head, everything slows down. Like all your thought patterns slow way down, and you're like a zombie. But it's like, what are you gonna do? I gotta go to work. Like, I mean, I never called in sick. Like, I get pissed off when a guy be like, "Oh, I partied last night, so I called in." I'm like, you pussy. Like, dude, I stay awake for 5 or 6 days, and I still show up every day. I still go to the gym every day.
Throughout this process, I'm sure you've had a ton of people ask you about sleep that don't have narcolepsy. So I think kind of where we're going here is, what have you seen help other people that just can't sleep because of stress or whatever issues are going on, just the normal sleep issues that people have?
I think, well, first of all, I think we kind of talked about this yesterday. The one interesting thing is that me going through dealing what I deal with allowed me to have a whole lot of insight to other people.
Right.
So even at my team, when I was competing heavy, you know, would range from 4 to 5 people. We could, the owner of the gym we trained at, he pulled me to the side one time and he goes, "Chad, I don't think your team's ever going to really get that big." I'm like, "Well, why?" He's like, "You guys are pretty intense." He's like, "I think you scare most of the people off." So like, it would only grow so big, but there was a lot of times that I would really watch, and we were talking about watching when your clients or team and stuff come in and just paying attention how they move and talk and all that stuff. And so I was always asking them, you know, what's your appetite like? How are you sleeping? And I found out that when you start overtraining your central nervous system bad enough, it seriously affects your sleep, and it affects it pretty quickly. And if you catch it early and get on a deload or something, or up your recovery, like, you can stop it like that. So what I found out is my guys, they'd be like, "Oh man, I was a little restless last night. Like, I just couldn't seem to get to sleep." And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute, that's my normal sleep." And I found out that if I let them go, if I kept pushing them, it would get worse and worse and worse to almost insomnia. And so then I got to where it's like, if they said restless one night, I'm like, dude, if they tell me that three days in a row, you're done. And I would deload them for a week. By the end of that week, almost always they're like, "Yeah, man, I'm sleeping great again." And I'd be like, "Okay, let's go." So like, a lot of times I found out overtraining will seriously screw up your sleep. And then that's a snowball effect. Now you're not sleeping, so your recovery is even worse. And then a meathead or a really aggressive person like myself, you're like, screw it. You just keep going, and you eventually get used to having screwed up sleep. Like, it's normal for you, which is kind of where I got to, because I was still pushing so hard. I mean, even though I was doing less than most of the other lifters I was competing with, I was still overtraining. But I kind of got in that phase where I was living like that was normal to me. So now I'm off subject here, I think. So like, I mean, but if it's and it may not be your overtraining, maybe it's stress from your life, maybe it's you know, any number of things. Sleeping could be caused by any number of things. I mean, there's a lot of normal stuff, that, like the blue blocker glasses, like getting off the computer, shutting the lights off earlier at night. I mean, all that stuff helps to a certain extent. I think it's like training, though. It's like a training program. Like, there's a shit ton of things that can work. It's a matter of going through them and finding which ones actually work for you. I mean, I know people that take melatonin and it knocks them out. Like, I actually spent the time to swallow half a bottle one time, and it didn't do anything for me.
I think it's easier, because I track the shit out of my sleep for a lot of different reasons, but I think it's easier now because there's a lot of variables at play. But to me, the amount of money somebody's going to spend, on melatonin, different sleep things, or it's the stupid blue blockers or whatever that's going to be, if you look over a period of a year, to me, it would just make more sense to buy an O-ring or an Apple Watch, start tracking the sleep, and then start looking at when the quality of sleep was better. What time did you go to bed? What time did you wake up? And you can put in there, I use the Apple Watch mainly, but you can put in there, if you took Tylenol PM, if you did this, if you did it, whatever it was, and you can see what it is. And after just tracking it, you don't need to wear the watch all damn day, but wear it when you sleep, you just track it over 3 months. You're like, oh, now wait a minute. If I actually go to bed at 9:30 instead of the 10:30, there's a big difference on what happens here. And so to me, there's almost no reason anymore for somebody to be asking those questions, because there's a lot of different things that could impact it. But you have to track it and can't just say, well, I think I fell asleep at 11. But you don't know.
You have no fucking idea.
I think sleep's a funny thing, because especially with like some of my girlfriends and stuff over the years, when you're actually sleeping in bed with somebody and you don't sleep, it's funny the things they'll say. They'll be like, well, you slept last night. And I'm like, all right, I was up at this time. And they're like, I didn't sleep very good. And I go, well, you talk in your sleep and you snore. So I pretty much know you were asleep from here to here. Like, people honestly don't have any idea.
And they don't know the sleep disruption either. So
Yeah.
They don't know
So a lot of times, like, and I have the ring.
it fit your fat hand.
I got the biggest one, and I have to wear it on like this finger.
Yeah. And it only goes up to 13. That's why I asked. My hand's swell. I can't get it off.
Yeah. But, like, I think a lot of people have no idea. And like you said, they're like, well, I got 8 hours of sleep. It's like, no, you were in bed 8 hours. But how long did it take you to actually fall asleep? And then, like you said, it's interesting to track, too, like, the times that you sleep good. Like, you can change your sleep schedule. There's nothing that says you can't, I mean, depending on your job and stuff. Or even, I'm not opposed to naps. Like, if you have something tracking it and you're like, hey, I only got 6 hours of sleep last night. Yeah. Like, I need to try to fit in a nap today if I can.
Well, see, to me, when I hear the 6 hours of sleep, well, what does that mean? Like 6 hours of the quality sleep, or 6 hours of restless sleep? 6 hours of what? Because I can look now and say, oh, last night I got 8.5 hours, but my restful sleep was 4.5. Yeah. So that doesn't mean, that's good. Yeah. It's like my normal restful sleep's 5. So what did I fuck up?
That goes back to defining, what do you define sleep as? When I say sleep, in my brain, when I'm saying sleep, I'm saying quality sleep.
Yes.
But it's not. I need to define that. That's actually.
See, I look at it 2 different ways. I got time off my feet and I got sleep.
Yes.
To me, they both matter for my recovery with what this stupid shit that I do. So time off my feet can just be laying in bed watching TV as well, but it's not sleep.
No.
But it's time off my feet. So I mean, there's a lot of. As I'm saying, there's a lot of variables.
And that goes back to whole. Are you overtrained, or are you under recovered?
Yeah.
Like, those are 2 different things.
And like I said, I can look at my steps too. It's like, okay, steps are down, sleep suck. There's a correlation there. So with those people that are asking, that would be what I throw back is, what metrics are you using, and could they be more quality metrics? And then if it's, well, I can't afford the Apple Watch, I get that. How much money are you spending on this other shit that didn't work last year?
Right.
Because usually it's more than people think it is. Because you want to sleep, you want to sleep.
It's a lot more,
how many pillows did you go through?
Yeah.
All these different. You still may have to change that too.
And like you said, with the technology now, this is one area where the technology is really good. It's so hard to know, was my sleep good or bad? Like, when I first got my ring, funny enough, I went back and looked at all my actual sleep studies, because I'm like, I want to see how accurate this thing is. So I went back and looked at all my sleep studies, and I was actually surprised how close it was to my actual sleep studies. But then, like, when I first got it, it was like, dude, this is depressing, man. And I was sending some of my things to other guys I know that have sleep problems, and they're like, thanks. I thought my sleep was bad.
See, I keep an open mind with this stuff, because to me, just the way my brain works, there's no way that this watch on my wrist is actually as good as a sleep study or any other stuff. But they're metrics. Yeah. And every morning I got to answer, did you rest? Was it good, medium, or bad? So there's that, so I don't really say I trust the technology.
Yeah, well, it's not perfect, but at least
No.
it gives you a lot more information than you have.
Well, it's way better than guessing.
Yeah.
Right. So I can remember when I was in junior high and I used to keep a training log, as powerlifting. The back sheet of my training log, the first thing on there was how many hours of sleep, and I'd write that. How when you woke up, how did you feel? Scale of 1 to 5. I had like 20 different variables. But even back then, I'm a fucking idiot, 13-year-old. I'm tracking my sleep to be able to know how it's impacting, the training, because the training sucked. But that can mind fuck you though too, because you wake up and you're like, oh shit, the sleep was a 3, my training's gonna suck. I used to track biorhythms too, which was fucking crazy, because then it's like, oh shit, this is supposed to be a bad day.
You're feeding that in your brain all day.
Yeah.
It's like with, I've actually had athletes that have had like the Oura Ring, and they do all the HRV and stuff, and they would just be like, yeah, it's a red day. I'm just not gonna, I think we should just pack it up. It's like, you have no fucking idea.
Yeah, see, that's
you woke up and you took a shit.
That's
like,
the problem.
What do you? Yeah.
That's where you got to not.
And like mine, because I would get up and look at it every morning, and it was like, hey, my usual 3 hours, and of that, I got 1 minute of deep sleep. Great.
PR.
But it was like, I think I hit 15 minutes one morning. I'm like, holy shit, dude, 15 minutes of deep sleep. But yeah, I would just kind of look at it and go, okay, well, it was just information. I really had no feeling about it at that point.
Yeah. Years back, when Buddy Morris was with the Browns, they had no Mega Wave. When they were basically, I don't know if it first came out, when it was first starting to be popularized, these things were super expensive. And so Louie and I went there, or I should say I went with Louie because it was a consulting thing. And Buddy wanted to test us, and we were going to train. We were up there, and our conversation on the way up there was like, Louie's like, I don't feel fine. I'm going to be moderate. And I'm like, I feel okay. I feel between moderate and heavy, so I'm going to kind of go in the middle, but it's not going to be this crazy thing. And it was it was max effort, because it was during the week. So it's like, what do you want? So we're trying to plan it out as we're going up there. So we have this conversation before we get there. We lay down on this table and take this Omega Wave thing. We were laying there for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and there's fucking probes everywhere. They're on my toes, my feet. They're everywhere, like EKG things, but just everywhere. And then it comes back. We're waiting for the results, and they read all it. And they basically said, Louis, it should be a moderate day for you. Then Dave, it should be, kind of between. And we looked at each other like, the fuck is the point of it? If you just listen to yourself, and that's where I think that state of readiness with the O-ring can be a mind fuck, where it might be good for the coach to see, but not the athlete.
Right.
Because then the coach can know, okay, maybe I should back it down because this says the readiness is at 60.
And just be aware
71.
of it for the session.
And be aware. If things look a little whack, then back it down, because it's so hard to be able to tell. Some people perform great when they're up against a wall. So how do you explain that? Some people, if they know, I didn't sleep well, but I got to do this, it's like, what the hell? How many of the best workouts did you ever have, but it was under terrible circumstances?
Yeah, but that goes down a whole another rabbit hole. I remember when I first started my team, I'm like, dude, I want to find some 18-year-old kid with great genetics. I found a couple. They sucked. Like, they had no heart, they had no will. And I'm like, dude, find me a stubborn, mean, like aggressive kid. I don't care what his genetics are. But then it was the same thing there was a time where I thought in my phone, I have all these top lifters, and I can sit around and I'm talking to them. I'm like, I'm going to write the greatest program of all time. I'm going to put all this information together. And all I found out was everyone trained different. And I'm like, well, okay, so what's the commonalities? And it was like all these top guys tend to listen to their bodies, and they all have horror stories. Like, it's funny how many of the strongest people in the world got picked on as kids, or got abused, or like all these horror stories. And it's like, maybe genetics, like,
it matters. You can't say it doesn't matter. It definitely matters, but there's a lot more going into this than just that. Because you can take somebody with just horrible fucking genetics.
Well, yeah, they're never, but you can make them stronger, but they're never going to be like a world competitor.
No, but they can make it. They can qualify to the nationals. I think anybody can, unless there's just neurological damage. It's just impossible to be able to do that. they can at least qualify. They can get to that level if they have the determination, the mindset, and the ability to learn.
And that was always the funny thing to me about, especially with like, there's so many programs that were designed out of Eastern Bloc and stuff, and it's like, well, those programs were designed and those studies were done with the genetic freaks.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were picking little kids, going, "Hey, you're going to be a gymnast. You're going to be this. You're going to be that." So how does that study relate to the average Joe dude who doesn't have those genetics?
Well, it does.
It's like,
they still came in though, because they just
Yeah.
got weeded out. You know, so it's a process of elimination.
Right.
It's just got a bigger funnel. But the other thing I've always said with the genetics is, especially in strength sports, is when genetics meet the right leverages is when you find out what's really possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. So that's a big factor too. The other one is it takes a long time for most people. There's always outliers to get strong. So how do you know you have good genetics within 3 years? You didn't even try.
That's true.
You know, I mean, a lot of the guys, women, you know, however you always, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to get bashed. It's the way I just talk. It takes a long time. I mean, if you look at the guys that are, just say the powerlifters competing today, they're doing very well. Maybe they've only been actively on the scene for 5 years, but look how long they've been training.
Yeah, how long have they been lifting?
And it's 10, 15 years. It takes a long time.
How would you compare, say, athletic genetics to strength genetics? Do you think there's a link between the two? Like, if you have a guy who has great athletic genetics who may not end up being that strong, or vice versa, somebody like I worked hard to gain anything in sports, and I was okay. Like, I don't think I have great genetics as an athlete.
There's muscle fiber types. There's a lot of factors that kind of play into that, but I would say it depends what. It's anecdotal from just what I've seen. It depends what sports they came through. They come through jiu-jitsu, MMA, wrestling, individual sports. Then I've seen the tendency for them to be able to excel higher in bodybuilding, strength sports, and stuff like that, because it's so individual. You're so with yourself. It's almost like a natural fit. Now, the wrestling, MMA, the fighting type crowd, there's a lot of work you need to work with them on work ethic, because they will fucking train for 8 hours straight.
Everybody's going work ethic with those, and they go,
no.
It's the other way. It's the brake pedal.
Because they will run their ass into the ground, because that's what's worked before. The team sports gets a little tricky. The team sports, it's a different fit. I'm not saying it can't happen, because some of the best powerlifters came from football, you know, as linemen. So the other thing with that team sport side is, if they're really good, then they're playing D1 football, or they're going to the NFL. So they're not going to be powerlifting, you know. So they're going to go where that is, and so it's hard to say. I would say the better the athletic background, even from the set of many sports at a young age, the better they're going to do in strength sports to a degree. Just because they're going to be more coachable, they're going to know the work ethic, they're going to have the explosive ability, which matters, you know, because it's developed very, very young. So if they miss that, then you can still keep their explosiveness. Maybe you can develop it some, but it's more about keeping it.
So now I got another question.
You came from a throwing background. It's an explosive sport.
Explosive as fuck.
You know, so that carried over into that. Now, my question would be, if you didn't come from that throwing background, would that explosiveness still been there?
And when did you start?
I don't know, because, like, my dad was a carpenter, so, like, I went to one camp at Mizzou. They showed me plyometrics, and I went home and went, "Dad, we got to build these boxes."
Yeah, but younger.
And I was a working.
What age was that?
Man.
What age was that?
That was, I think, by the time I was a junior in high school, I was doing my own plyometrics.
What about a little younger?
I didn't start. I started lifting in like 8th grade. Little bit
lifting,
with
no, just like moving, like running, jumping.
I didn't do a team sport till high school. I mean, we played. Back in those days, everybody. I mean, I played ice hockey with the kids in the neighborhood.
That's what we're getting at.
Football. We played everything.
Yes, right. So that's what I'm saying. Is the play aspect when you're younger? What is it? right? Because the kids that are just sitting playing video games, they might have good visual acuity,
Right.
which may mean they might be a good quarterback or linebacker. I'm like, there's good things associated with that, not all bad.
Right.
But they're probably not going to be the most explosive athlete.
Right. Because they haven't trained their body to do that.
And you're talking about different just movement styles, movement planes. Like you're talking ice hockey, that's way different than just sprinting, than jumping.
Yeah.
Like you're working.
And we
all
literally
the
like I lived on like I think it was 3/4 of an acre, and my neighbor had an acre, and like my other neighbor had an acre, and like they didn't give a shit what we did. So like I mean we went from playing golf over the houses to playing like froth to playing wiffle ball and then cut and going, we can't throw a bad enough curve with this. Let's play with half a tennis ball. And then playing football and then playing baseball and then playing hockey. And like we were switching, like I guess we all had ADD or something. But you'd hit a sport hard for like 3 weeks and you're like, all right, we got to find something else to do.
Well, I mean, that pretty much explains where a lot of that explosivity comes from. Just that variety of movement at that young of an age.
Yeah, so if you can dig down, I mean, so to answer your question, if you can dig down and see what that multi-training component is at a young age, you can kind of see a little bit there. Because genetics still play a role, but so does the development of certain skills during certain ages. And then you got to look at the mental part, where, yes, you are right, where a lot of people that end up in the strength sports were the ones that were bullied and kicked around and just like, fuck this. The refuse, resist, non-compliant, fuck you, this is who, that's definitely a role too, if you dig down into that as well, which isn't so much, the genetic thing, but both of those, that can help or hurt them. And it really, I mean, it really can. It can go, that can go two different ways. But, and that's not saying that that mental aspect, while I think it does become a driving force there, if they don't have that, I think they can develop it, as long as they're around, if they see it, they can certainly develop it if they want to develop it. That's the question. So then the other question becomes, well, does this determine if they want to develop it or not? Right. I don't think so.
Well, here's another one I thought of one time, because I've always thought about like what makes a great lifter or even a great athlete. So when we talk about people having genetics, what are we really talking about? Like, is it that guy has, like, we all grew up and there was the one kid that could just throw hard as shit. And now that I know, I look back and go, well, that kid had good technique. Was his genetic gift that made him good, that he had great proprioception, he just knew how to throw? Or was it that his muscles, he had more quick or fast twitch muscle fibers?
I think it's always a few.
Like, I mean, it seems like there's so many variables. How do you actually pin down what really you're talking about?
You can't, because there's going to be a lot of different ones. So say, I'll go way out into, let's say somebody who's in the strength sports has a great ability to process, absorb, and utilize drugs. Right? So,
True.
I mean, we all knew the people that could just take a little bit of test and get strong as fuck. Right? So that obviously is not a learned trait.
Right.
That can only fall back onto being a genetic trait.
Right.
So you could say, well, yeah, that's one, because now they can get way more output out of something that other people have to put more thought into, or have to deal with more side effects and all that. And that's just, I'm going way out there, right? But so you can say that's certainly one. You can say the explosiveness is one, but that could also be counterbalanced by they can't strain.
Right.
So there's what that is, and the ability to learn, and to be coachable. So there's a lot of factors, but usually what I find is when you get to the higher level, you're going to see one or two. That's why that person is who they are, right? So some of the strongest lifters that we've all seen and known over the years, they're not super jacked, right? And some are, but some aren't. Or so you can't say that being super jacked is one of those components. But it could be for that one person, but not for this person. Right. Because for this person, the component is probably just the ability to strain. And all these can be trained to a certain degree. And some that we've seen through strength sports, it's 100%. No, it's a lot higher percent. I don't want to speak in absolutes. Mental. Because they rip them fucking selves apart. Yeah. And they're not overtraining. Because you see what they're doing. Everything they're doing is intelligent, but they just rip the fucking shit out of themselves. There's only one way that
I mean,
happens.
like in powerlifting, you're gonna get hurt. If
Well,
you're pushing it, you're gonna get hurt. It's gonna
I'm talking that there's a whole other level there, you know, where there's just holy, you know, just keep going. Like, Jesus, dude, you need to stop, you know. But then they just find a way to keep. That's a genetic mental thing, kind of, you know. So,
well, it is. That's another division of, like, when you're talking about mental genetics.
Well,
I mean, genetics, or is it just a mental factor? Like, if somebody says I have physical genetics, I'm like, yeah. I don't know.
The reason I put
built
that
a lot
in
of
there,
it, but mentally, I think I have genetics mentally, because I just like heavy weight and scaring weight and like knowing that a weight could crush me, like that actually makes me excited.
Yeah. Well, the reason I put that in there is because, you know, I've known several people that would just have a pec strain, not even a pec tear that needs surgery, but just a pec strain, bad strain, and they're done.
Oh yeah.
Now, I can't say that's good or bad. That's their decision to be able to make that. But that person's way different than this person that's like, fuck it, I'm going, you know, they keep going. Who's right, who's wrong?
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that person there that's got that ability to just say, fuck it, keep going, they're going to make it to a higher level.
Yeah.
Right? But this person here may have got hurt here. So they get, and this is what I've seen more, they get up there, then bam, that first injury, then they're gone.
Done, yeah.
Right? And that's okay, because they still actually end up being higher than the person that tore the shit out of themselves. So at the end of the day, when they're both 60 looking back, that this guy say, I only did it for 3 years, but I still beat you.
Yeah.
Where the other guy is like, well, fuck you, I did it for 15 years.
Right.
Well, who cares? I still beat you by a lot.
And in the end, that's all that matters.
Well, I know in the end what matters is what are you satisfied with? I mean, that's the biggest takeaway is when you walk away, what are you okay with? You know, no matter what your that's my point I'm trying to make is no matter what your genetic strengths or weaknesses are, when you're done, you got to live with you.
Except we're never going to be okay with it.
Sure you are. You know, sure you are. You know, you just got to.
It's never enough. It's never going to be enough.
It can be. You know, well, we talked about that a little bit. Obviously, you didn't hear a word I said last night.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think for you specifically, like you took an entire recovery modality that our body usually needs to grow and develop, and you're like, I'm just gonna not do that thing, and your body still grew and developed. Like, to talk about the mental side of things, and I think this is gonna be a good segue. Like, during your time of lack of sleep, like during all of this, like the last 10, 15, whatever, however many years it's been, you suffered from the cognitive effects of lack of sleep and with depression and whatnot, if you wanted to kind of jump into that a little bit, because I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, right? Because there's a lot of people that utilize the weights as a form of coping strategy or a form of whatever to get through some of their mental insecurities or mental situations. But I feel like in your particular case, you're talking about something that may have come up from a physical, right? A physical lack of sleep, a physical lack of recovery and rest.
Well, definitely my depression. I mean, it's always kind of there, and the suicidal stuff is always kind of there, but it's like low grade, not a problem to deal with. When my sleep gets bad, it gets bad, and the more and then it's this whole snowball effect.
Just like turns the volume up on those.
and then you're like, well, I can't stop training.
How far down this road do you want to go?
I'll go all the way.
Okay. Keep going.
So, you know me, I'll talk about anything. There's nothing off limits with me. So it's a whole cycle of things. And like my brain's going 900 miles an hour right now because like what you said just opened up so many different floodgates and different avenues to go. One of my biggest things, like the listeners right now, is it's like, you need to understand how important sleep is. And if you can sleep, fucking do it. Like, pay attention to it, because it's going to stop so many other things, and it's going to put you so much further ahead if you just pay attention to your sleep. Like, people, that's one of the things I go, you'll spend shit tons of money a month on drugs. You'll buy all kinds of stupid supplements that don't do shit. Like, you'll try to buy the best of all the gear in the world. You'll train all the time. You'll leave girlfriends for training, but you won't get a little more sleep. Like, why? It doesn't cost anything. It's just a little bit of time. And so it annoys me, especially because I don't sleep. So it annoys me when people can sleep and they don't take advantage of it. It's like, odds are it could be better than the drugs you take. Like, it could give you better gains, than, depending on what and how much, of course. But so people forget that, and then they also forget that your sleep will lead to, even the people I know that don't deal with depression, if they let their sleep go long enough, you can tell in their personalities. Like, it affects everything.
Oh, yeah.
So it's something it's definitely worth taking a look at. And, like, if you're talking about things of recovery, if you wanted to list it, like, sleep's number one to me. Like, get sleep. If you can get sleep, sleep. And even, I think it was, I was talking to Stan Efferding one time, and he's like, yeah, I go to bed at like 9 o'clock every night because I want to train every day. So in order to train every day and recover, I got to be in bed this many hours. Mm-hmm. So he like prioritizes sleep almost more than his training so that he can keep his training and recover from his training. And I go, God, I wish more people would actually look at it that way. But as far as, geez, I don't even know where I want to go. For me, it was like, how did I get through it? How did I do it? So I made up my mind. Mm-hmm. Like, for me, a lot of things are that easy. I remember there's a few things in my life that I just knew. I think when I did my first 700-pound squat, I told everybody, I'm like, dude, I'm going to do 1,000 pounds drug-free. At that time, I'm not sure there was anybody that had actually done 1,000 drug-free. And my teammates are like, that can't be done. It's impossible. And I'm like, it's already done. I did it. We just got to wait till I make it happen. And like my family, everybody's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But I made up my mind that I was going to do it, and it was going to happen. It was just a matter of how exactly I was going to execute it and how I was going to get there. So, I mean, there's literally been times in my life where I'm at home with a gun to my head, in tears, like just trying to figure a reason to not like end all the pain.
Well, that's where I want to go, because you started this conversation, right, by saying, oh, there's sleep, and then, depression and suicide just a low grade. No, there's a lot of people that suffer from lack of sleep, and depression probably comes with that. Mm-hmm. Suicide is completely a different conversation. It's a different issue, and it's not low grade. You see what I'm saying? So when somebody becomes suicidal, as you were several mm-hmm. times, yes, that's a contributing factor. We can talk about all the other contributing factors. That's yay nor nay, because it's different for everybody else.
Right.
That's not low grade, right? It's sticking to your gun to your head, trying to figure out where to go from there. It's not low grade. The question and the conversation becomes, what pulled you out of it? What made you, I don't know if we're gonna get banned on YouTube, but what made you not pull the trigger?
Well, there was one specific time, but I've been close a lot of times, and like, I mean, there literally was times where it's like, okay, got to go to the gym, and it's like, bam, that goal was above killing myself. So, okay, go to the gym, but then I'd come home, and within a half hour, I'm right back where I was after training. Usually, it was like, I would get to that point, and it's like, okay, do I want to do this? And I would start thinking about how it would affect the people around me. So I was more concerned with how it would affect them. And like, I think the one where I really made a change was I was going through my head, and I'm like, all right, my brother will deal with it. He'll get it. I go, my dad will be sad, but he'll get over it. He's a dude. My mom, I've talked to her about it. She understands. And I rolled down to my niece, who was little at the time, but we hung out a lot. I thought, God, what's this going to do to her? Like, how is she going to grow up knowing this? Mm. And it was like, all right, Chad, shit or get off the pot. Like, either fucking pull the trigger or fucking don't. But stop doing this. And that was for me, that was the point where it's like, okay, you got to do whatever you got to do to not get in this position again.
That's where we want to go. That's what I want to talk about. Yep. What are those steps after that point?
That's where it became... looking more and more into it, it was like, dude, every time I've gotten really bad is when I let my training get completely out of hand. Where like I was overtraining and it was worse, and my central nervous system was getting fried, and I'm starting to tear muscles, and like just pushing it way further than it did. And that's where, like, my 14-day program originally started out. I started out a regular West Side, and I called it. I think it was 3 or 4 months later, and I called you, and I'm like, dude, everybody on my team goes to shit every 4th week. And at that time, Bartley was, I think Mark was, started doing like deloads every 4th week, and I was like, well, I don't want to deload once a month. That would suck. So I started spreading it out gradually, and it was around that time where it's like, all right, I think we were at like a 10-day basically split. And I'm like, all right, I have to have more recovery. Like, I have to. And so I spread it out to 14. And the funny thing is, all my teammates just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Every time I spread it out, everybody on my team, and I'm the only one with sleep problems, everybody got stronger. And then at that point, when I kind of, I think that's about the time I wrote on my training log, that really long, depressing one, and I didn't realize my mom would read it. So once my mom read it, that sucked. And so, like, I basically made promises to my family that I wouldn't let it happen again. And, like, that's a big fucking deal to me, I promise. So it was like, okay, listen, Chad, if you get to this point, and luckily I had a couple of training partners that are really good at seeing how I'm doing without me talking. And, like, they would start going, hey, what's up? I know something's fucking going on. And so I had myself, and then I had other guys to kind of start catching me. And it would be like, all right, if Ethan tells me I need to deload, then I'm going to deload, even though I don't want to. And because I knew I have trouble controlling myself. So I tried to find outside people to help watch that. And really, that's what, I mean, like when I was talking about like low grade, like there's times throughout my life where it's like, I call it a fascination with suicide. Not that I'm going to do it, but it's in my head, and I think about, dude, is it really like, just wouldn't it be just easier just to, so like there's time, that to me, that's like low grade suicide thoughts, which may be normal, I don't know.
Well, the question I'm going to throw back is, you kind of pivoted and said it was a training, right? But the real answer was you had the people around you.
The support structure.
Yeah.
Because what would you do if you couldn't train? What if during that time period your knees were blown out and you had to stay home and you weren't able to go in the gym? Look, I know who I'm talking to. Your knees are blown out and your shoulders blown out and your elbows are fucked up, right? So you absolutely can't go to the gym. Then what is it from there?
I don't know, because I've never had it there.
But what would it have
been?
been?
That bad. I mean, like every really bad suicidal thing I've had to do with me like training hard, heavy, and like pushing it probably further than I should have.
So what you're saying is, to avoid it, don't train.
No, I'm saying control your training, control your overtraining. Like, my uneducated, not a doctor opinion is it has something to do with the central nervous system being overtrained and how that affects the chemicals and production and all that stuff in your brain. And for me, I feel like I'm probably more sensitive to it, which is probably because I don't sleep. So like I'm always dealing with on the verge of overtraining because I don't get delta sleep. Like I don't.
So you have the checks and the balances then. So it's not just the training. It's the training, but then having your training partners that are checking in on you to make sure.
Like having somebody else to keep me accountable.
Yeah.
Kind of. And I have all kinds of great stories just being in the gym.
I get that, but
when
see,
I'm
that's just a conversation that you're having with them, though. I mean, it's you walking in the gym and just a checkup, like how you doing, just like a mental checkup, right? You could do that online, right?
I don't know.
You didn't say no. So now going back to what we were talking about last night, the online coaching, that's all stupid.
Well, you said it yourself.
No, what I'm saying, though, is if it's a mental check-in and it's somebody that's got a tendency to train that's in the same spot that you are, having that online person, if they don't have anybody else to check in with, can save their life.
Yeah.
So now is that online coaching a bad thing or a good thing?
Online consulting is a great thing. No, I was actually going to give you a point to defend your thing. You said earlier, like, you would read my training logs and guys were calling you up.
Yes.
Like, they hadn't seen me. They were reading my log and they knew something was up.
And where did they read it?
On elitefts.
Online.
.com.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
see what I'm saying?
No, yeah,
right?
you're
So
making a point.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey,
so
fuck
saying
you,
that,
Dave.
well, no, I'm just saying that there's a value to this
I
consulting.
agree.
You know, that's far further than what you think it is.
Well, even, I mean, now that you say that, like I've only have a few online clients right now because I'm still trying to grow that. But I have them now that they're like, I'm like, I ask them the same stuff. How's your sleep? How's your appetite? How's this? How's that? Okay, here's your training. I can see your training wasn't perfect, but it wasn't too bad, and ask more questions. So like I'm keeping guys, that's like more important to me than the programming, is keeping him recovered.
With your training
for the
partners,
training.
what do they think was, what do you think at the time they thought was more important, your training or your mental health?
Mental health.
So how's it any different than what you just told me?
It's not.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of those things that us old heads, you know, make fun of because, you can't do that online. You can't do that online. Look at what you can. You see what I'm just saying? You know, so
Well, that's kind of what
especially if you've been down the road.
It's
and
a little bit.
You've been down this road,
Yeah.
you know, several times, you know, so there could be people that are looking for online help, consulting, or whatever it's going to be. They're basically dealing with the same demons.
Right.
Who would be the better person to work with? Somebody that's been down that road, or somebody that has no idea to even say,
Oh,
hey, look,
yeah.
man, where you at right now? Because everybody needs mental check-ins, you know,
Yeah.
regardless of who it is. Because everybody, no matter what it, maybe there's some rare exceptions. Everybody fights depression. I mean, that's, to me, that's a common, I'm not going to make fun of it. I mean, it's a serious thing, but it's common. You know, the other road's a little different.
Yeah. Well, that's what, even with my teammates, you could, who all were normal and slept fine, you could see when they would, if they started getting overtraining and their sleep started going bad, you would see it in their personalities. And kind of like we talked earlier, like, would you rather have a guy with a weak mind and great genetics, or a guy with maybe not the best genetics, but like just hard-headed meathead type? I want that meathead guy that I got to hold back. At least I would pick that one over that. So, and if that's the case, then how important is the mental aspect of training? If I got guys that are depressed all the time, how good is their training going to be if I can keep them on the better side of that? I think their training is going to be a shit ton better too.
Could be. You know, it's
Although I've had some great sessions completely.
No, I mean, I'll be completely transparent. I mean, I probably shouldn't, but how you want to define weak mind? Because you're putting a bias in here, right? Because to you, the weak mind is, you know, that person that can't get it up to be able to go train when they're supposed to train. You know, fuck that. You do this, you do this, you do this. But you just told me that you had a gun to your head.
Yeah.
So what's a weak mind? What's a strong mind? There's a bias.
My
point.
My mind is strong because I didn't do it.
Well, I get that, but that's not the point that I'm trying to make. The point that I'm trying to make is everybody's going to have biases.
Oh, true. That's true. Yeah.
So what you got to do,
human nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you got to understand where your biases are, because somebody else's definition of a weak mind is going to be completely different than what yours would be, and vice versa.
Well,
and so
that
forth.
the same guy that I'm talking about could play video games for 8 hours straight, and I can't do that. And he can
Yeah,
play
so
it
he
in a
was-
week.
yeah, that-
You can't
yeah.
focus for 8 hours to play
Yeah.
friggin' Call of Duty or
Yeah, that's
something.
probably a better point right there. So, you know, so he's going to say, dude, you got a weak mind. You can't sit there and play a video game for 9 hours. You're weak.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I guess so.
And I think one of the major points that we should touch on as well is I mean, I came from a counseling background, so I've had some instances of situations like this and talking with people and kind of having these conversations. And one of the things that you had said is that in that situation where you were at your lowest, it was a decision you made to do one simple thing. And it was that one decision, whether it was that agreement to your niece, agreement to your mother, to your parents, whatever. It was that one thing that took you out of that situation for that split second. And it allowed you to then make another decision to keep going. Another decision, another decision. Now imagine, I'm going to go with Dave on this one. Imagine in that moment, you didn't have a niece, you didn't have your family, you didn't have, you know, training partners that you were accountable to, and you got a text message from your coach. If you got an email that popped up, and it was like, just checking in and see how you're doing, right? Like that situation, that thing could have been the thing that kept you going. Because it's not about the fixing the mindset as a whole. It's about getting you just out of that state long enough to separate yourself from the action and the feelings, right? Like it's the input and the output.
Clear your thoughts, kind of.
It's kind of just it's just distract it long enough for you to be like, I don't want to do this right now, and that's huge. Like that's probably one of the biggest things to get someone out of that situation. Again, I'm not a clinical professional here, but
none of us are. We should probably state
yeah,
that.
right.
And,
We'll put that
suicide prevention hotline, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Call, talk to somebody.
But it's amazing how much impact as training partners, as brothers, as whatever, it's we can have on someone's existence by just being like, you know what, I haven't heard from Chad in a while. I'm just gonna send him this stupid meme I found online. He'll get a kick out of it. And then you know what I mean?
That's hard to say for me because I am definitely different. I have the word
for sure.
misfit tattooed on my back. Like I did have friends do that, and I'd be like, I'm fine. And I mean, they knew by my response, but I didn't even want to deal with it. I didn't even want to, like, that wasn't even like a thing in my head. But that just because that's for me doesn't mean it's not for others.
Right.
One of the amazing things, and I tell people this all the time, I'm like, actually, like, I'm more proud of the stuff I did talking about depression and suicide than any of my lifts. Just from these responses I got back from people. Like, I'm proud of my lifts because it actually gave me access to do this. And when, like, when I wrote that first one, I wrote one a long time ago. It was the first one I wrote about that. And it was like, I wrote it, and that was kind of one of the things, I actually wrote it because I was like that close. And I'm like, fuck it, I got to get this out. So I wrote it all down. And I went, I should put this on my training log. And I went, maybe not. I think I stared at the computer for a couple hours. And then finally I went, fuck it. Enter, and went to bed. Well, I got up in the morning and I'm like, fuck. Like, I just lost all my sponsors. People are going to think I'm nuts. Like, fuck. That was stupid. And the responses were unbelievable. And so, and then I had a lot of people contact me, like, and I've had people tell me over the years, like, dude, you got me out of it just hearing that somebody else is going through this was enough for them to go, wait a minute, if Chad made it through, I can, like, just that little boost to go, just keep going. You can, like, you can get through this. Yeah.
So I think there's other things associated here that because we've lost a lot of powerlifters retired to suicide, and I'm not talking just a handful. It's a lot. Yeah. So I'm that's why I wanted to have you on, to be able to have this conversation, because I'm tired of people saying people need to talk more about mental health, and then there's public service announcements and all that other shit. No, they need to talk to people that have really had to suffer and deal with it, and make it part of the conversation. So instead of talking about making it a part of the conversation, we're making it part of the conversation. So I think there's another aspect to where your identity becomes too associated with your strength physically, and then as you get older, as you move away from the sport, as you get injured, then that your identity starts to just get pounded. Now, you were dealing with this before that, right? But this is a bridge you're crossing now, where your identity is going to need to shift, and pivot. Not so much as some of the others that I've seen, to where it's all of that. Then they can't deal with the fact that, holy crap, I can only bench, 300 pounds, where I used to bench,
When I first came into it, I tried to keep aware of that. Like, I tried to always remind myself to enjoy this now, because when you're 50, you're not going to be able to stay 385 pounds, and like, there's going to be you only have so long to get strong. And at some point, it's going to turn into either trying to maintain it as long as you can, or just getting healthy and going, okay, I had my time.
I get that, but see, what happens in the sport, though, is your confirmation bias is going to click in. Because you say, well, you really shouldn't be, you can't do this when you're 50, but then you're like, no, wait a minute. He's doing
Masters.
He's doing it. So your confirmation bias starts looking at the outlier that a lot of times you forget didn't even start until they were 35 or 40.
Right.
So that becomes that factor in there. But that separation.
Well, even like we were talking last night, I kind of realized over the past couple weeks that, like, wait a minute. Like I thought I was kind of losing weight and I thought I was getting healthier and I was kind of fooling myself. And I kept falling back into, well, wait a minute, I could go do this meet, or wait a minute, I could go get this record. Instead of just going, like, you had your time. Like, why do you even want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I always look back, like, two of the big ones for me for some reason were Odie Wilson and Anthony Clark. And
You're validating what the fuck I just said.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm telling you, I
yeah.
argue with the shit. Like, I have these conversations in my head, and I'm like, I argue with myself. Where it's like, dude, why do I keep going back into this? You know? But like Anthony Clark was one that was like, dude, man, that dude was so smart and he loved helping kids and like he could still be around coaching people with all the knowledge he had.
Mm-hmm.
Like we lost a great lifter and a great person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I need to keep reminding myself of that because I have that natural tendency, like you said, to go, even though I'm aware of it and I was aware of it from the beginning, just because you're aware of it doesn't mean you're completely fighting it, you know,
well, like
or ignoring it.
Like I told you last night, you lean into it. You know, you find ways to lean into it that still accomplish what you're really looking for.
Right.
Because what you're really looking for isn't the 1,200 pound squat. You know, I think it's just that straining. It's that doing something that you didn't think that you could do and pushing through that. You know, it's just reframing what that is. And then it doesn't have to go. It's still there. It's just reframed and leaned into instead of this battle of this compared to this. Yeah. Where there's alternatives, you know, and
it's almost like it needs to go back to
embrace the washed up meathead.
Yeah. It needs to go back to what I did as a kid in my basement. Yeah. Like I've never squatted this. Holy shit, I'm going to try to squat this. And just that push and that, like, how far, what can I lift today kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And not worrying about everybody else, but just getting back to the roots of why I loved lifting to begin with. And not worrying about all the other shit.
The further that, because the sport, coming from the sport was hard, you know, just to watch the sport for probably 5 or 10 years, you know, after I left the sport because of that. Now that it's separated so far and I found how to reframe and all the other stuff, now I can look at the sport and be a fan of the sport. It's like, holy fuck, you did what? Yeah. That's awesome. You know, where before it was kind of like, that's awesome. Fuck, what? You know, then it's like, shit, you know, you're trying to compare. What if I was lifting today and I didn't have to go, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. And that's just a false narrative that's just stupid. Then you start looking at what people are doing today, like, holy fuck. The sport has, I don't care what anybody says, the sport's fucking advanced. There's a bigger pool feeding into it. You know, so there's a lot of crazy ass things going on, you know, in the sport on all levels, you know, single ply, multiply, all that. There's just crazy. If you look at the people and the lifters, you know, you look at the politics and the federations, you're going to get frustrated. So just don't. Yeah. You know, that's a huge thing with that.
I still go back to, even with my clients now, they'll be like, well, I could take this. I go, dude, don't look for records in shitty federations. I'm like, what is it, open powerlifting now? I'm like, go there, find the top 100, start working your way up the list.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about all that other crap.
I think that I do because we talked about this last night too. I think the listing does help because a lot of people will get caught up into that's good for them. Like, I hit a 20-pound PR, and I mean, if I'm working with them, it's like, yeah, well, your technique's fucking horrible. If we fix that, that's 50 pounds. If you do, like, you could be squatting 100 pounds. Yeah. More. And if you're around people that actually didn't think that 315 was a big squat, you know, like a 500 or 600 would be more of a realistic squat, that perception changes. So when they start looking at the list, and it's weird the way it is because it's not all time, so you got to look at reps or however it is. And you're like, holy crap, I'm like 865. Okay, what do you need to do to be in the top 500? Yeah. You know, then you just start kind of climbing
just
up
gradually
there.
Working up.
Yes.
I have it's starting to train more people now, and I train a variety of people, and especially women. Like, I've always, like, I think I'm like you. I look at a lift, and I if I don't tell you nothing, then it's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, I'm going to tell you what we need to fix because I'm looking at you and going, what could you squat right now with your strength? Let's get there, and then let's really start building strength. And I'm so much nicer than I used to be when it comes to coaching. To the point where if I'm in the gym, like some of my old partners will go up to the people I'm coaching, they're like, "You're so lucky. Chad's so nice now." And that client's like, "What? He's nice now? What? What was he like before?" Mm-hmm. But I've had to try and with some of my clients figuring out who their personalities and stuff. And it's like, I got to give positive feedback to some people. Mm-hmm. And that's like something that's taking me a while to learn because I'm so used to going, if I don't say nothing, and that's on my team, that's the way we all coached it. Mm-hmm. Don't tell me what's right. I need to know what's wrong so I can fix it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that seems to be a different mentality. Like there's only so many people with that mentality.
There's some, it goes both ways. There's some that need that. I mean, trust me, I will find everything wrong.
Yeah.
So if I look at a lift and like 98% of it's right, and I see one little thing, it's going to be like, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
But by the time, hopefully if I'm doing my job right with the people that I'm helping, they're going to know going into it, that's what they're going to expect. So but once that initial shock, wears off, then it is, that's better. It's better. But it's a breakdown process because it's what you see. You're not looking for the good things.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm looking for
that's what I'm saying. I don't look to go, hey, this is right, this is good, this is good.
Yeah.
I'm looking to go, what can we fix?
Yes. And sometimes
and I like try to tell my clients, I go, listen, if I find things wrong, that's good.
Yeah.
If you come in here and you squat 400 pounds and I can't fix anything, that's not all that great. That means we just got to get stronger. But
yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. If you come in and there's all kinds of shit wrong, I'm like, dude, we got shit to fix, man. This is great.
This is easy.
Yeah.
So I think we've been, I think running for close to 2 hours now. So do we want to take some of the Q&A stuff? All right, guys. So in the chat box, launch some of your questions over to us, and we'll take a few seconds, just kind of wait for stuff to kind of pile in. Actually, there's a lot of good discussions going on back and forth with a lot of people in the chat about mental health stuff and like some situations that they're actually sharing in here. So that's pretty cool to see. So you've opened up a lot of really good conversations, even in this chat.
Well, I think there's so many things. Like basically everything in life is tied together. I tell people all the time, I go, I know we want to separate training and life, but they actually interact. And I don't think you can separate them. No. Not fully.
No. I think the big thing with the mental health component is, having people that you can check in with. But even if you don't have people that you can check in with, if you're struggling, reach out to somebody.
Yeah.
Because you would have to be, if I don't know very many cultures, but I know American culture, you'd have to be a fucking dickhead.
Yeah.
If you're walking down the street and somebody's really suffering and they come up and you can tell and they're like, look, I need to talk. You would be a fucking dickhead. I would say everybody that I've ever known would be, let's sit down.
Yeah.
And let's, so there's to not think that there's somebody is just false. Yeah. And then there's phone calls,
It's different though, because like when I was, and people are different. So there's always, like you said, the outliers. When I'm really bad, I don't want to talk to anybody. Like it almost makes it worse for me because I feel like I'm dropping all this shit on them. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I've actually went to my doctors before and go, listen, I need this for a 2-month prescription because right now I'm struggling and I'm too close to where I don't want to be. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to be on this stuff all the time, but I need something to get me over this hump. Mm-hmm. And like that was something I had to learn and be willing to accept it. Like, hey, listen, you're not taking it all the time. You're just taking it because you're going through a hard time right now. And it's going to help. I mean, it definitely eases things up. But so like, I think people are different in what they actually need. Like some people like to talk about it and it helps them. And some people, I get people all the time that are like, Chad, if you just call me, here's my number. Like complete strangers. And it's like, well, dude, I really appreciate that. But for me, that doesn't necessarily help me. But it does help a lot of people. I know there's a lot of people that would, and I would do it. Like I tell people all the time, dude, if you're having a rough time, call me or message me. Like I'll find time.
Yeah. To go with your point, it's the darkest days that I've had that I've suffered with. I don't want to talk to anybody either. I got a very small, if it is, it's a very small crew. But what I would do, if the people are suffering and they're in that same type of position, is just go buy a notebook say a moleskin notebook, whatever it is, and understand from the very beginning at some point you're going to burn this. Nobody's going to read it, and you're going to hide it from everybody. And just start writing. And here's the crazy thing. A lot of times you're going to say, I don't want to write. But then just write, I fucking hate myself. I fucking hate myself. And just keep writing that over and over. And what's going to happen over a period of time is other shit's going to come out. And then you're going to start writing shit in there that you wouldn't tell anybody. But remember, you're going to burn this, but you're just getting it out.
It does, as even in my own mind, I think, well, that's stupid. But I know it helps. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the meathead, like the tough guy part of me goes, that's dumb. But I'm telling you, no, it does help.
I've had books to where probably the whole book is just said fuck them all, and it was written, I mean, one page just said fuck them all, fuck them all, fuck them all, fuck them all, and it takes 50 pages of writing that to then something you're like, okay, wait a minute, right? So it's basically a self-check is what it ends up being. Then you're like, no, I don't want to write that.
Well, even on top of that, and I kind of spaced this, like between you two, it just came back into my head. I've got a lot of photography tucked away on my computer that's seriously dark ass shit. And it was all stuff I did when I was seriously depressed. And instead of writing, that's what I did, is I came up with these images in my head, and I'm like, I want to get a picture of this image.
Well, basically, it's a narrative,
it's the same
right?
thing.
It's an expression.
Yeah, it's the same
expression. You want to create a narrative to where you're actually looking at yourself and saying, okay, you deal with it. If I can't tell you or I can't tell you, then I got to tell you, the person in the mirror. Then let's just deal with this. But you don't want to. So like all these pages, like fuck you, you're a piece of shit, and all this stuff. Then 15 books later, 3-4 weeks later, now you don't want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
But you sure as fuck don't want anybody to read them.
But I think I'd let somebody read them.
No, man.
I think it kind of takes you almost outside yourself.
It does.
Where you kind of get to look in, and I talk about that when I've talked about depression before. I go, for me, and I imagine it's a little different for everyone. There's a point where it's like almost like I'm floating above myself, and I'm seeing myself, and in my head I'm going, Chad, this isn't you. Like, don't do this. This isn't you. This is just something you're going through. Because it's like I feel it and I don't feel it. Almost like once you get deep into it, shit starts getting weird.
No, that's good. And weird or real?
Yeah. And I've like all the closest times it was really like I would be above myself, and I'm like, God, you can't kill yourself because you feel like this right now. You're gonna get past.
Well, that's
this.
going back to what Sam said a little bit ago. You got to find some pause, something, just to break that pattern.
And that's where I think like the photography for me at the time was one way to do that, to kind of pull myself out of it. And then it's more like I'm trying to get this picture that this other guy has in his head. Like I'm trying to put this in digital form. And it kind of like gets me to step back and look at it and go, wait a minute. And like pull some of the emotion out of it. The emotion of like, I got to stop this pain. What's the easiest way to stop this pain? And pull me out where I'm not necessarily feeling the pain, but going, hey, I understand what you're going through, but stick with it. You can get through this.
And that's what a good counselor or therapist can do is you're supposed to be that mirror, right? That objective reality for that person, and just be able to showcase what they are saying, how they are saying it, what they're feeling, like just based on their information that they give you, right? And you're just supposed to just bounce that back at them. Yeah. And then have, just like you did with your photography, be faced with that reality of what's going on in that moment of time. And I think that itself is just that awareness leads you to be like, oh, like I'm thinking of it this way, but I'm saying it this way. You know what I mean? Just that awareness.
Different perspective.
That perspective.
Different perspective on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've gotten a couple questions earlier on about, and I think this is a good time to do it, kind of breaking down. You had mentioned it a few times, that 14-day training style that you have. Do you want to break that down a little bit? How you actually kind of structure that a little?
Basically, what I do is when I first started Conjugate, it was a regular West Side template, basically. And so you had your 2 main max effort days and your 2 dynamic days, and you would fit them into a 7-day split, if you want to call it that. And like at the time when I first started changing this, like everybody on my team, and I had like 5 guys that were all really very different builds, and we would all hit the same wall. And then, so like what I was saying is, I think I was talking to Mark at the time, and Mark was running into the same thing. And he's like, well, I'm gonna just have everybody deload every 4th week. So you would do that 3 weeks of the regular split, then go to your deload. And I'm like, well, I don't want to deload every week. Like, I love training. That would be that's one shitty week a month for me. I thought I'd rather spread it out. So then what I did is I just went, okay, well, let's start with, why do we have to do this? Who the hell says a week's a week? Like, who the hell says we should live on 7-day rotations? Like that, I didn't say that. I'd rather work like 4 and get 5 off or something, you know? So then I was like, okay, well, let's go out to 8. And so I originally started that same 4-day split on 8, and it eventually worked out to 14 days. So basically I have a week that is my 2 dynamic days, and then I have a week that is my 2 max effort days. And now there's a lot of time in between there that I don't like not being in the gym. So that's where I started adding in more GPP and recovery sessions. So that, actually, I remember having a talk with you a long time ago about that. And I was like, Dave, you don't understand. Like, if I'm not in the gym every day, like, life sucks. It's horrible. Everything goes wrong. Like you couldn't understand that. And it was like, that's where I'm like, well, I don't know if you brought it up or I was asked. I was like, I read these recovery things that Louie's doing for time to work. And that was like, that was one way that I dealt with, okay, it sucked, but you were still in the gym. And it may have been 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but you were still in the gym, and mentally that kind of helped me deal with having more time off. And I really had to look at it as like, okay, you can keep training every 4 days a week and beat the crap out of yourself and have to take every 4th week off. And then your training sessions, our training sessions would just get progressively worse during the month. And I go, well, that sucks. I'd really come in on my max effort days and feel good and have tons of really great max effort days. So it's like, do you want to train all the time in their shitty sessions, or do you want to train less and have really good sessions? So it kind of made sense. And I mean, I had my one teammate, I think when I went from 12 to 14, one of my teammates is like, fine, that's it. I'll start training by myself. I'll be undertrained if we go 14 days. I'm not doing it. And I go, fine. I go, this team's always been kind of a democracy, but I'm goddamn king anyway. So, like, we're doing this. Like, end of story. If you want to leave, leave. Well, he didn't leave. And then, like, 3 months later, he hit his first 1,000-pound squat. One of the only other drug-free people I know to squat 1,000 pounds other than me. I mean, I think there's probably maybe 5 that I know of that I think are actually drug-free.
See, I have another theory that kind of plays into this, too, because you were squatting over 1,000 at the time, and I'm just going to throw numbers out here, because I don't know how it's going to relate to smaller people using 700 pounds. But and this is maybe can play into some of the stuff you know with McGill. You start putting 1,000 pounds on your back, 900 pounds on your back, week after week after week after week. That's going to create an entirely different recovery demand outside of the muscular, because of the bone and the nervous system and all that. To where I hear the same things now with the people that have been 900, 1,000, 1,100, stuff like that. They're all like, man, I had to drop my squatting to twice a month. You know, I had to take it down to once every 3 weeks. They can't. It's definitely, from what I'm hearing, it's definitely related to the amount of weight on the spine, because gear does not change that.
Right.
And that top position, it does not change that. So I think that's part of it too, on how when you switched it over, things started to go up just because you're able to recover better. So yes, there's the sleep issues, the other issues, but I'm looking at that. In the nervous system, what do we know, like 10%, 5%? We don't know a lot about the nervous system. So I don't want to sit here and say, well, your central nervous system, when 90% is unknown, anybody can say, yeah, it's your central nervous system.
It's like a smoke bomb.
It is.
It's like nervous system.
There you go. There it is. That's the reason. But I've seen it so many times that that's a factor. But what I don't know, though, is if it's completely related to 800, 900 on a spine. Yes, the muscles hold, right? The muscles support. But what I don't know is, say you got a 165-pound person, is that 700 the same as the 900 or 1,000 on the 350-pound person? That I don't know. I would assume no, but it's an assumption because it's the nervous system, and I don't know.
Right.
But I think that the default, though, is if you're not recovering, you know, and you got multiple factors. So that's just your sleep was one factor.
Right.
The weight of the barbell, that's another factor.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So,
But then there's another factor on top of that too. Like I think George Halbert was the first person that I heard say, as you get stronger, you're going to need more time to recover.
yes.
And like a lot of people are like, no, well, you train longer, you can train more because you train your body to train more. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. So like when I tell, like, I'm not going to put a beginning lifter on a 14-day program because he doesn't have the ability.
They don't have the coordination either.
Yeah, he doesn't have the coordination.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the technique. He doesn't have the intent. He can't push himself that hard. I mean, it's the same thing when I told you, like when I was a kid, my squat sessions ended when I couldn't physically walk up the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
But in all reality, like I thought I was such a badass and I thought I trained so hard. It wasn't until I started powerlifting and I got good that I went, those sessions were nothing compared to what I can do to myself now.
Yes.
And I still have that ability. I just can't lift the weights that I did before, but I still have the ability to just shit myself in an hour. Like I can just kill myself. So I think there's so many different factors, and I'm not going to put everybody on a 14-day schedule, but I do. If I got clients that are 40 and up, I start them on a 14, and if I can get more sessions in later, that's fine.
So 2 of them are the strength sessions, and then there's more.
Yeah, you basically have a dynamic week and a
conditioning.
max effort week,
Okay.
and then you have a lot more GPP sessions in there.
Yeah.
And that's where we were talking about the unilateral stuff. Like you can do unilateral all day long and get strong as shit. Don't mean you're going to be a bilateral squatter.
Now, are your GPP sessions that are in between there, are they spinal loaded, or are they body weight sled work?
It's
squat?
more like unilateral stuff. I love doing sled work.
So it's not spinal loaded.
So it's not spinal loaded.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, and because I think that's like you said, it's hard to say how does that really affect the central nervous system.
Yeah.
But I know right now to this day, if I go to a bodybuilder split, I can train every day.
Well, yeah.
But I'm
it's
not.
different.
That's just my muscles, and my muscles can recover.
Yeah.
It's the central nervous system, and even like I always talk to my teammates, and even the guys I got now, we're like, dude, dynamic day is almost worse than max effort day.
It can be.
Like if you really know how to put the intent, and you're really moving the weight, and you got somebody screaming at you to go faster and faster.
Yeah.
Like those are almost harder on my central nervous system than my max effort days.
Well, yeah.
Which goes back to that first seminar I did with you when you benched. Like we went in to do that dynamic. I got tons of stories about that seminar. Like if I wouldn't have went to that and saw you bench, I would have had no idea what you meant by like dynamic.
What do you mean?
Like how fucking fast you move the bar.
Oh, the bar speed.
Yeah. Like I was like, how the hell is he even doing it that fast? Like I would, if I wouldn't have actually went and saw that, I would have been like all the guys that post, this is dynamic. And I'm like, that's dynamic to you? Really?
Quiet on the super chat front. Do you want to wrap it up, or what do you think?
Yeah, let me wrap it up.
Cool. All right, guys.
No, hold on. Are there people on?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, we got
Because we're going to have Chad film content.
Yeah.
I think you're doing that later today, right?
Yeah, we're going to do something. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any exercises you want to see him teach? Is there anything that you want to see him do in the gym? Because this would be kind of cool, is letting them decide,
Yeah,
a couple
absolutely.
of the pieces because you got stuff scheduled, I'm sure. But if there's something that they want, pop it in the super chat, and we'll see if we can get it done.
Cool. Yeah, let's give him a few minutes here. Yeah, we have. The amount of people on, we got 115 people, 112 people, something like that. So yeah, guys, put in what you want me and Chad to do videos with. This would be kind of cool. Then we can put it all over your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
1 million subscribers for Chad. That's what it's gonna be.
Fuck, we need to get.
Yeah, I know. Well, us
We
first.
can't
but
even
then-
grow our own subscribers, which the people listening fucking subscribe, like. The likes are more important, I think.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
do that. I still hate doing that on my YouTube channel. Hey, please like the channel, subscribe to the channel, share the channel.
But that sounds so natural. You just did it there. That was perfect. That was good.
It makes a difference, though, because I can say from our standpoint, we're looking at those things, and if it's okay, that sucked, we'll never do this again. And then people are like, why'd you quit doing that? Well, because it sucked, and nobody liked it. No, we didn't have the metrics, so we got to do what you people want. So now we're giving them an opportunity to say what they want. If they don't want anything, fuck it. We won't film anything with Chad.
We have.
And then we can blame it all on the fucking
Yeah,
people
right.
that are on the channel.
Fuck you guys.
Like, fuck you. We asked. You didn't want anything. We're going to lunch.
We got a few, actually. We got GPP exercises and how to structure a GPP workout. We got top 3 squat supplements and accessories, mental techniques for squat training. Yeah, we can work with this.
All right,
This is
cool.
good. This
Now
is
you
awesome.
can wrap it up.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for checking out the podcast, joining us live here. Chad, I'll have you have the last words. Put any sort of links or any sort of social media, YouTube, all that stuff. If you want to close it out
What's
with
your
that.
What's your
I
YouTube
love
channel?
pumping myself up.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
The YouTube channel is Courage Barbell. I've only been at it a year, but I mean, I'm putting videos up every week regularly. Various things. I talk about everything because like strength is so involved. I have episodes on mental stuff, episodes on technique, episodes on sled dragging sessions. I'm debating on like putting my training on there, like starting like a vlog thing. If people want to see that, I don't know.
What's your Instagram?
My Instagram is Chad Aichs, I think.
Yeah.
And he's
it's
a
my name.
and he's a
There may be a-
columnist for
yeah.
our site. So if you just search elitefts.com, Chad Aichs is going to take you to his author page. I don't know the number of articles that we have, but it's a lot. He's been a
I've written. I think
columnist.
I've written like 150 or 200.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it may even have some of the logs will come back in time. But the articles are really good. The one that he just did for us, the bench. What was that? The 3 bench things.
It
or
was
whatever.
how to PR your next bench session.
Yeah, that's doing really well. So people should check that one out because it's doing really well.
It's a big one too, because that one it's 3 simple things that don't take you that long, but they'll let you get in a way better, more advantageous position. Like I think everyone I've ever shown that to in person actually PR'd that session.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. And actually,
And had less shoulder pain too.
and we actually just showcased that on the Instagram as well. So there was a swipe up link for that. So awesome. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks, guys.
Cool.